group stage live from Berlin, Germany. After saying goodbye to Excel and Heretics in the regular season, we are moving on to the best of threes today on our way to crown the spring champion and find our second representative at MSI. The studio is full. I'm glad you missed us. I missed the studio as well and everyone, and I'm very happy to be joined by Dagda and by Goldberg. It's odd, isn't it? I mean, it's the same. It's gonna be the same in summer. Rather, we're gonna have a little break. Do we all feel reinvigorated to tackle the groups?
I think so. I think it was nice having that little break where in between the best of one and the best of three, and more so also for the teams, because I think some of them might have needed that little extra break as well, but going from the best of one to best of threes.
I just love the stakes. I love that we're back into the best of three, where you can actually go, all right, like, what's going to happen? Obviously, everyone gets a second chance here, but still, the fact that we're actually getting into some really, really good series, I'm excited for it.
And you're healthy again, because you weren't feeling that well.
Yeah, no,
so,
just about. Yeah.
So excellent. I mean, it wasn't excellent that you weren't feeling well, but that it was in the break week. We all have new energy. Now, what I wanted to do to kick the day off and to kick the group stage off is to pull up the standings from summer 2022 and spring 2023, so the one we're currently in, to see what catches our eye, because there are two things that immediately jump top of mind, Dagda.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that BDS and Astralis running their way right the way up to the top, they look absolutely incredible. And I think it's been really cool to see how these teams have grown and learned over the course of not only just like this split, but also last split as well. It feels like they've really set themselves into their stride and they know how they want to play the game.
Yeah, and it's just like for Astralis, a small substitution with a mid laner where they suddenly just got a completely new stylistic of a team. The same with BDS. They were good in winter, got even better in spring, and just kept building on the already very good foundation that they had.
How is it that Astralis and BDS have improved so much? What is it that they're doing differently than other teams?
Well, I think it's what Goldberg was kind of hinting at there. It feels like these two teams have really found their identity. Like adding Leader into the mix now, Astralis feel like they're able to go for these early skirmishes, which they look really, really good through. And then when you look across at BDS as well, I think it's really cool to see that they've gone, hey, look, we want to fight for dragons, but they're also setting themselves up really well for those dragon objectives, where they're going, looking for, can we blow a summoner spell 2 minutes before this actually kicks off? Can we blow an ultimate before a fight starts? And then letting themselves feel themselves nice and easy into these fights.
And I also think just from a meta and drafting point of view, these were some of the teams that understood from the get-go what they needed to do in draft. I have been very impressed with Astralis, but even more so with BDS. It's simple when you look at it. They just always wait with their solo laners to the last time, but they pick the champions that matter, that gets them priority, like Asia, a good pick for Adam, and it just works for them. I've been thoroughly impressed with it.
But not everyone has an Adam. So maybe that makes it more difficult.
But we're all made up of atoms.
Yeah, there's only one. So that's true. I just got that. I wasn't actually listening to you. That happens sometimes. But in any case, Astralis and BDS, I'm kidding.
I listened to you. It's okay.
Astralis and BDS, so definitely have improved. Would you say they are overperforming, or do we just have a couple of teams that are underperforming as well? I know that's always a contentious topic because, yes, of course, two things can be true at the same time as well. But what do you think is going on?
I think it's a bit of a mix. I think, because we kind of hinted at, like, Astralis and BDS found their identity. I think they've got a really good way of playing this style that they want to play. But I think on the flip side, I think a team like Mad Lions has kind of slipped away from that identity, where they used to be the team that, okay, strong mid-jungle, we'll play for side lanes, and then we'll go through strong team fighting. But it feels like now we're not getting that same work through Niski and Oyoya. Hilly's been caught out in random places. It feels like there's certain teams that are underperforming, but definitely we still see the overperformances from some squads.
I mean, and the same can be said for Koi, right? There was days where we came in and we looked at them, we thought, hey, you're finally looking good. Like, it seems like you are getting a clear identity. And then the day after, it's all gone again. I think that inconsistency is really what sets them apart from some of the top teams and why they're struggling to just get over the line, because they have not been as good. And sometimes it comes down to a bigger macro, but for Koi specifically as well, that bot lane, they just got 2v2 kills quite often. So it was like both a team thing, but also some of the individuals at times really struggled to show up.
There's so much that could be at play here between kind of adjusting to the way the tempo is so high in this new structure, between the way that it was the same patch, and if you don't have it figured out from the start, maybe you're always just not able to catch up. It is interesting, though, that it is specifically the teams that were so good last year that faltered down to the bottom. We also have some outliers. I want to say Fnatic, who people expected at least a bit more from. All of a sudden, they figured it out. Apparently.
Yeah, I think it comes down to kind of how teams have struggled to, or at least have found kind of the fundamentals of how they want to play. So when you look at like a team like Mad Lions, like they'll look at Dragon Up setups and they go, oh, well, Niski's pushed underneath his own tower. We have no pressure in bot lane, but Oyoya will start up the Dragon. And then it's like, oh, well, then we die at Dragon and kind of question mark why the hell we were doing this in the first place, right? Yeah. But then when you look across at someone like Fnatic, I know Goldberg has been a big talker about how good their drafts have been in trying to set themselves up for success when it comes towards like team fighting and the later stages of the game as well.
Yeah, and I also think like for a team like Mad Lions, it's not because they're not afraid to pull the trigger. I'd actually argue that they pull the trigger way too much, and when you just pull it like that, you're bound to shoot yourself in the foot, and that's often what happens. And from the side of Fnatic, I think they had good drafts, but in the beginning, they just really struggled to play out the good drafts that they had. So that was more so an individual thing. It's hard to say, oh, some of the bottom teams are struggling because of this one thing. They all have things they need to work on.
They do. Let's pull up the group's bracket. Win twice and you're in the playoffs. Lose twice and you're out. We have Astralis versus Fnatic later today as well, but we'll be kicking things off with Vitality versus Mad. Overall, these are how the groups have played out, and they are quite spicy. I want to say, of course, some of the teams could pick their opponents, but overall, do you feel like they're well measured, or is there one outlier that you say, okay, this is for sure going to go the way of X or Y?
I would have to probably go with G2 and Koi from what we've seen from them.
Yeah.
I think Koi is the biggest question mark to me because I was so used to them being very consistent, but suddenly they're not. You can go back and look at Winter, say, well, they got 7 plays and made a good run through it, but we need going up against G2, who in best of series has always been the best team in Europe.
I'm going to go and say that that isn't a risky opinion.
Yeah. So,
as you were saying it, I guess you realized, like, oh, actually, G2 are pretty good at that stuff.
Yeah.
I think the team that's standing out to me is SK. Okay. I really want to see what happens with this team. Like, I was really excited about them in winter. Like, you get Exakick and DOS coming in. They look absolutely fantastic. They're in the bottom lane. Mark Hoon playing around them fantastically. And then that magic seems to have just evaporated. I don't know what happened coming into spring. We're not getting that same synergy. And I think when you've lost 4 out of your last 5 games, this is where SK really need to step up against BDS. And it's not an easy opponent with the way BDS are playing. So I think that's the big question mark for me is, can we see the SK that we got at the start of the year?
Yeah, cool number I researched as well in the break was SK in winter in regular season, they got 9 2v2 kills from the bottom lane, but in spring, they only got 3. So it's just like, even some of the macro things, you can say like they started playing topside, whatever, but even from an individual point of view as well, something felt a bit lackluster. So it's really cool to look at these things in comparisons too.
And it's really nice to see, hopefully, how the teams will have improved coming into these best of 3s. Now, the winner of the LEC Spring Split will also become our 2nd team to represent us at MSI. However, in the event that G2 win, it all comes down to championship points. Here to explain championship points, we send it to our special guests. Take it away.
Hello! Hello! And welcome everybody to the Patronizing Show! Woo! Where we teach you things while using funny voices! Funny voices! Oh, my name is Sokias from the magical land of socks. I like to explain things. What's your name?
I'm Aaron Chamberlain. I'm 31 years old, and honestly, I've lost control of my life.
No, that's a different meaning. But let me slap some happiness into you. Okay, slap some happiness.
My name's Steve.
Hi, Steve. What are we here for today?
We're here to explain championship points.
Yay! Championship points.
Okay, so now imagine you're in the LEC and you play some games, and you either lose or you win those games, unless you excel. Then, at the end of the split, you end up in a certain position.
You mean like upside down?
No, silly! We're not in Australia!
No.
For each position, we give out points. Less points for a lower place, and more points for a higher one.
Whoa, but why do points matter?
Well, championship points are important for MSI and for the LEC season finals.
Whoa, but wait a minute. I thought G2 were already going to MSI.
They are, you silly Billy. But if they win again, we don't know who our 2nd seed is.
So that's why we use championship points. So, have the teams got points already for winter?
Yes, and you can see those points behind us.
That's just a green screen.
Stop burning the illusion! Stop it!
Don't
you slap happiness into you, huh? Okay.
Wow, look at all the Mad Lions points. Wow.
Yeah, Mad Lions, I love the Lions.
Really?
My favourite's Mufasa.
What?
I can't wait to see him grow old with his son. They look so happy on the poster. Oh, so happy. Oh.
Anyway, as you can see, a team like Mad Lions
MSI have lots of points from Winter, which means they could still get to MSI even if they don't do as well in Spring.
That's true. And a team like Fnatic, who didn't do that well in Winter, would have to win the whole split if they want to go to MSI.
Wow.
And they haven't won anything in 5 years.
5 years? That's how many fingers I have on my hand. Let's count together, everyone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So, let's summarize. If you win Spring, you go to MSI's first seed.
Yeah. And if G2 win, then the second seed is determined by what points?
Yeah, and you gain championship points from your position in both Winter and in Spring.
Yeah. Basically, Man have a lot of points, and Fnatic don't really have many.
Wow! So it's all about the friends we made along the way.
No, Medic, it's literally about championship points.
It's about friends.
Championship.
Right, well, we'll see you next time.
See you on the next episode of
The Patronizing Show! To hear more about the patch, let's send it over to someone who's very beautiful, stunning, so smart, the biggest of brains. It's Medic! Yay! Hi everyone, and welcome to another LEC patch rundown. With the LEC kicking off again, we'll be jumping from patch 13.4 all the way up to 13.6 for the rest of the spring split. Let's chat about what changes have hit the Rift during the break. To calm your nerves, the new champion Melio and the reworked Yuumi will be disabled for the entire LEC bracket stage, so we're not covering them here. Make sure to check out the full patch notes for more information on these champions, and we'll see them in summer. Well, hopefully not Yuumi.
Sorry, please don't hate me.
Top lane buffs abound with Rumble and Kennen back in the spotlight.
No way.
Not ADC Kennen. Sorry, Reckless. While Rumble's E Electro Harpoon now shreds enemies' magic resistance like butter, Kennen's Q Thundering Shuriken was given more base damage, a higher AP ratio, and less cooldown. There's one player I'm sure would love these changes. But here comes Odo! He slices through them all! But sadly, he already lightning rushed out of the spring split. Perks also must be pretty sad, as his most played champion Aurelion Sol has had his wings clipped, reducing his base stats, the damage of his Q, and the CC duration of his ultimate.
Tragic.
Analysts predict a heavy decrease in T-Tor's usage in Twitch chat. But fear not, Perks. After small buffs to LeBlanc's Q, dealing more damage to minions and refunding mana as well as some cooldown on target kill, you can deceive people into thinking you're in Worlds 2018 form. So we expect her to rise massively in priority through the rest of spring.
Here comes Perks. Perks blows up RNG.
In bot lane, we've already seen a bunch of Jinx during the regular season, and in 13.5, her attack speed growth as well as the W zap damage and slow have been increased. Seems like Arcane 2 is right on the horizon. Oh, also her ult now deals the same amount of damage to monsters as Smite, so good luck on your burger flips, junglers. On the other hand, Xayah has been plucking OP, so her Blade Caller damage has been lowered while the cooldown has been increased. I think I just heard Reckless breathe a sigh of relief. Finally, we have two system changes. In order to make top lane less of an irrelevant role, you get what I did there? Most elemental Drake buffs have been nerfed by a small percentage, hoping to reduce the early game focus around the bot lane. Furthermore, nerfs to Legend Bloodline, Lethal Tempo, Navoid Quickblades, and Bloodthirster are aiming to stop the dominance of bot laners. Last but not least, the early game cooldown of the Sweeping Lens trinket has been increased by 30 seconds, meaning you can no longer ward then reset for Sweeper to deny vision on your jungler's start location. Also makes it a little bit harder to clear out vision in the early game. That's all for this episode of Patch Rundown. Thank you for watching and see you on the Rift for the LEC bracket stage on patch 13.6.
Thank you very much, Medic. You are indeed very stunning. So let's talk about which teams were buffed and which teams were nerfed by the patch coming into this bracket stage, because we did have some jungle changes. Medic went through them in the beginning as well. There were one change as well to one specific champion that some may remember from Nuke if you are an OG ERL watcher of Nuke, and that is Qiyana. The fact that you can have the counter pick, the hidden OP, I don't know, hidden OP, a hidden champion in the Kiana for Nuke could come in. I feel like that's a little bit of a buff, secret buff to BDS.
Yeah, especially since we're kind of seeing more of the AD champions starting to come into the meta in the mid lane. I think this is going to be something that you can have in your back pocket. So I'm super excited to see if you actually get to see that Kiana come out and have that, you know, secret sauce that Nuke can bring to the table.
Well, we got more names coming up as well, and this is a Yike here as well. Dactha, what do we feel about Yike's chances going into this patch?
Everything but Yikes. They look absolutely fantastic. I think this guy's going to have a fantastic split at the moment, or at least rest of the split, because when you look at the changes that we saw to the jungle coming in, we actually have an opportunity to go for invades, where you got an opportunity to play more of a carry style and be more at the forefront and have lane support you. That just suits Yike down to the ground.
Great. I have another jungler here, Dactha. You talk a lot about counter jungling, clearing camps. What does that look like for Malrang then?
Not bad.
Oh, okay, so we're looking at a bit of a nerf here.
Yeah, it hasn't been the best of times for Malrang, I think, this split, and it doesn't really seem like it's going to get much better either, because unfortunately for Malrang, it has been a very rough time. The fact you're not going to be able to get as much experience off of lane minions means that he's going to be struggling a little bit, because that's kind of been his bread and butter. He tends to fall behind.
Exactly. Now, we got a mid laner here as well. His name is Leader, and while there wasn't specific buffs to his champion pool, there was buffs to the AP top laners, the likes of a Kennen, the likes of a Rumble, and with that, that could open up some of these AD mid laners you already talked a bit about with Nuke here, which has very much been the style of Astralis as well.
Yeah, and the fact that you get to use these AD champions then play for early skirmishes just seems to suit Astralis down to the ground as well. So I'm expecting big things from Astralis. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do today from that mid lane.
I got another one for Astralis though, and I'll be honest, he's been having a jungle playstyle a bit like Malrang, so I kind of feel like he has to go in the same booth with the fact he can't counter jungle as much with the style that we saw from them, but he also had a specific style in DRLs before coming to the LEC.
Yeah, I mean, looking at him in LEC, I think there was one game I watched, he hadn't cleared his first blue buff for like 7 minutes into the game, so definitely a bit of a different style, but I do agree when we look back at him in the LFL, he was very much about, hey, I want to go for invades, I want to try and play this big carry style, so I think we might see him fall back onto things like the Viego that we're seeing pop up in LCK and LPL, and then try and take over once more.
We got another jungler as well, Shio, one of the junglers with the highest counter jungle percentage, meaning, oh, I can deal more damage to enemy monsters and I get more gold for it. I think it's self-explanatory, has to go and be a buff for BDS too.
Yeah, especially when they've had so much control over the early stages thanks to strong lanes and given that opportunity then across to Shio to step up. I think it's just going to be a rinse and repeat. I think there's so many junglers now, they're going to see try and change their style and step up to be a bit more of that controlling style.
And next one we have...
What's that doing there?
We have Excel. I honestly don't know what this one is doing here, but if Excel were to be talked about on this patch, I guess we would actually call it a buff, a bit of the same Oroamne champions as well, with Kennen, with Rumble as well.
Yeah, true.
So it honestly would be really good for Excel.
Over here,
but we don't actually have them here, so it's... Yeah, next time. But going to a different team as well, Sad Lions, because they haven't really been performing as much as we would want them to, could probably be called nerfed, but we're nerfing the sadness and buffing the happiness with some of the jungle changes, which potentially could bring back some of the 2v2 mid-jungle we used to talk about for Mad Lions.
Man, I hope we get to see it, because I mean, Mad Lions mid-jungle was the strongest in the league for such a long time, and to not have that synergy there anymore is heartbreaking, honestly, to kind of see. So I'm hoping we get to see them step back into that role, playing towards Elyoya, working through Niski, and actually having fun with that once more.
And to bring us in to a bit of today's matchup as well, I do have
the Mad Lad.
The Mad Lad, the Mad Dog on leash, if you say so. Jungle changes. What are we expecting to see out of?
I mean, we've already seen him trying to bring out in spring things like the Kindred, the Karthus, all these kind of things, trying to step up to be that carry. I feel like we're going to get this again from him. The fact that he already has these champions and was his playstyle in the LPL, it just feels like a no-brainer.
Well, there you have it. Let's have over to the analyst desk and continue with this one.
Thank you. And you're coming here. It was so formal, but you're just walking here. So it's great. I love that breakdown. I feel bad for, like, I don't know, 113 and Malrang, because everyone else went into the buff category.
When I was kind of making the faces and I was going through it, I was like, hold on a minute. I could have probably created more negatives than just those two.
Shout out to John behind the scenes for making the sock puppets, and you actually cut out all the heads yourself.
I came in early today to cut those out.
To get a bit of a head start.
Yeah.
A head start, indeed. Let's see if Mad and Vitality get a head start as well in the group stage. This is the first match that we have in our best of threes, and it's not one that we saw in winter in the best ofs, at least. Now, when we look at the regular season, we see that Mad arrives here rather battle-scarred, I want to say. They actually barely made it. Vitality 2 to the top end. I think a lot of people are ending up positive with what they've shown in winter, even though it wasn't that good by the end of the season. But it was the same going into spring, and in the end, it was Mad Lions who made it to the finals.
Exactly. Like, remember in winter, Vitality won the regular season and flunked out almost immediately. Coming into it, Mad Lions did still have some struggles, but not as much as we're seeing this spring split at all. But I think going into the matchup, there's a very clear favorable team going into it, and that would be Vitality with the way they've been played, despite some of the struggles they've had.
Yeah, I think especially when you look at Mad, just not having that identity anymore, it doesn't feel like they know it's playing through mid-jungle. We've seen a different champion from Niski almost every single game he's played this split as well. It just doesn't feel like they know how they want to play or what they want to do. And I think that's going to be a big struggle against a team like Vitality that is very certain how they want to play.
That have their priorities straight. Talk to me about what their priorities were this spring. How have they gotten their wins?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch, because when I looked back at them in winter, I was like, oh, this is a team that's, you know, we're going to forego dragons, and then we're going to play for big strengths around getting gold, getting towers, and just dominating through that respect. But now that we're moving into spring, it's been a very different story. We're like, oh, we're actually going to look for dragons. We're going to make sure that we're setting up correctly for these, playing more for team fights. And as a result of having an objective that they can fight for in the mid to late game, their games are like 4 minutes quicker on average than they were back in winter. So I think it's been a big buff to them. And also I think the fact that upsets come in has made such a big difference to them.
That is just a big difference, right? That is the reason why the goal difference is suddenly looking so good as well. You have a guy who's incredibly good with resources, but we also know calls way more for resources. So when you have a playstyle where you're not playing too much up towards the top side, but you play down towards the bottom side, almost by butterfly effect of that, you will have higher prior on the Drakes too.
Yes, and we've heard also from people in interviews, I think Perks was one of the first to say that he is very vocal. He really lets people know what he wants, and you can see that in their play. Goldberg, and you dove a little bit deeper into when Vitality look their best.
Yeah, so Vitality look their best when they have that triple threat composition that kind of works for them. So I went back to the first week that we saw, because that was actually one of the best weeks they had. In this scenario, it's Bo playing up towards the top side against Excel, and you can think to yourself, well, this looks pretty normal. And it is at the same time, but it's not just the fact that they're playing top side, it's the fact that they have perks on something that's self-sufficient in the mid lane and that can roam. So he gets the priority from the mid lane and will immediately move it down towards the bottom side, where you don't need your jungler suddenly to play for the bot lane. You can just have your mid laner be the one shadowing, and there's nothing the enemy team can do on the other side of the map, because you've already beaten top side. Mid lane is just forced to push in. Now he's going to be late to the roam down. They can already go for the dive, and it's just more gold into upset. The thing is, it's hard to get 3 prio lanes every single time. Vitality is a kind of team that's very adamant at forcing this style, and when they don't have the free prio lanes, they still try and go for it. In this instance, Bo was laid off a reset. He wasn't necessarily playing up towards topside. He was forced out by counter jungling. Perk still tried to go for the bot lane play that we saw earlier just on the Annie, where he's the one covering from the bot lane, so Bo doesn't need to do it, but they overforce, and that's been some of the struggles we've seen for Vitality. They're very adamant in playing this style. I think they are a team of 5 gifted individuals, but their macro, quite honestly, from what we've seen, has been quite mediocre.
And I think a huge part of that is because, as you can kind of see there is that a lot of the players are disjointed on this team. You know, especially in week 3, like you would see Bo trying to make plays happen, but there wouldn't be like Perks roaming from the mid lane in the same way, or you wouldn't actually have them trying to link up with the bot side of the support. It looked very much like 5 individual players playing against each other, and then you're looking at upset who every so often make a call of we can do dragon, we can roam here, but not actually functioning together as that unit and actually cohesively moving around the map.
Yeah, and it's maybe giving us a different image than we would have expected after that insane start by Bo to the year, for instance. Now, you followed them for a long time. Can you summarize what you think about Bo in this current state in Vitality?
I think it's massively different from what we saw over in the LPL, because when he initially came through, it was very much a case of him working with Doomby, working with Chris, and going, hey, we are going to set up Bo as this carry on the Talias, on the Olafs. But instead now he's had to take a very different route, which is coming back in, I'm going to play the tanks, I'm going to take a step back and try and enable my laners significantly more, because I do have this triple threat that's there. And I think when you start to move then in towards now this new meta, maybe we see him fall back onto some of these more carry-oriented picks, but it's also been him very much playing a much more solo game, where he's the one facilitating lanes rather than lanes facilitating him. And I think to see that big shift in Vitality in this best of 3 would be quite strange if they suddenly mix it up. Yeah, jarring.
It might be indeed. They're up versus the Mad Lions, and for some more insight into the Lions, Frankie caught up with strategic coach Pad.
Thank you very much, Shox, and thank you, Pad, for joining me today. You just told me you've had the best week you've had all year. What was going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've managed to solve a lot of the in-game issues we've had, and through solving those in-game issues, we've managed to actually get a lot closer together as a team as a whole.
What was the key thing you wanted to fix last week?
I think when you have two big personalities like Elyoya and Hilly in a team, who obviously have Hilly has infinite amount of experience, and Yoya has won 2 championships with us as well. Getting those two to meet in the middle, find that fine line between how do we want to play League of Legends together, has been a hurdle throughout the year so far. But I think we've managed to crack it this week.
Do you think that was one of the things perhaps holding the team back in the regular season?
I think it provided, I think it was reason to for some of our inconsistency. But I also think that Mac and I have had some draft blunders on top of that. So I think it's been a bit of a mixture of everything.
So what were you trying to do with the drafts in the regular season?
So heading into week 1, I think I can reveal without saying too much, is we actually just had a different meta read from a lot of the other teams in the league, and we kind of showed up on day 1 with our Cho'Gath myth, and we had been playing that in scrims, and it's been going really well. We played 3 or 4 different flex champions, and we just been flex, and then we go in on stage, and it just makes sense that if this is the meta that other teams are playing, we cannot play this. So week 1 was a bit rough because on day 1 our meta read was wrong. On day 2 it was a bit hard to adapt on the spot. And I think by day 3 we started getting there, but it meant that we were basically just 2 games behind from the get-go.
And we're playing on patch 13.6 now. So what's the meta read for you now without giving too much away?
Meta read is probably biggest takeaway is probably that Azir is no longer the best go-to blind pick mage. It seems like it's a bit in the gutter with all of the nerfs it's received. Outside of that, honestly, the patch isn't huge. Annie wasn't touched, Olaf wasn't touched. There's a lot of champions that are still in the meta. It just some of the teams that was relying very heavily on Azir might be struggling a bit more.
And there's potentially more options for Elyoya now as well.
I think there are some more options for Yoya as well. I think he has a champion Ocean regardless. So we'll see how that pans out.
There have been 10 champions so far played by Nisqy in this split. Are we going to see number 11 today?
Let me think. You might see number 11 today.
What's the direction?
Forward, chaos.
Oh, I'm very excited to see what you've got in store. So I think what we'll do is we'll head back to the desk to see what they're anticipating for this matchup.
It's Victor. Chaos forward.
Chaos Storm.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
he gave us one, I guess. No, we don't know indeed. But I think you were both really happy to hear Pat talk about the perceived issues being the things that are in line with what you want to talk about right now. Draft, priorities, meta read overall.
Yeah, I think in general, we actually got some really nice insights from Pat here as well. And I completely agree with his own take of the team too. Draft blunders that we've seen has been unfortunate. With this one behind us specifically, I spoke to him afterwards. He was very sick. He was in bed. He was saying, oh yeah, I was watching the game.
Why were you there?
Well, I spoke to him the week after. Spoke to him the week after. And he was like, yeah, I don't know what happened. I saw this. I went back to bed then. And yeah, at first when you look at it versus Fnatic, it looks like a decent, good composition you just throw in together. But then you play it into the context of what Fnatic has drafted over here. You pick 1-2 Nautilus. They pick Braum on 3 or 2, and then you have a Jinx as well that's just scaling with it. You go into the 4 and 5 bands, and you haven't taken away the Azir from Humanoid, and there's still a guy who deals with some of the CC that you would have to skirmish around here. It's just too difficult to play, and that's been some of the blunders that we've seen. This is just one example of a few, and I think not only that, when they have gone for some of their other drafts, we saw the one with Cassiopeia where they had to kite back, they played like a let's engage comp. So I think for Mad Lions, it's just been a bit difficult for them, not only to identify what they want to do going into draft, but also going into the Rift afterwards.
Do you have trust that they are going to turn it around? You've got 10 seconds.
I hope so. I mean, Pat seems confident, and I'll trust in Pat, I suppose.
We'll see, indeed. Well, let's get those best of 3 started. It is time to kick off the LEC 2023 Spring Group Stage.
A little bit shaky, but Mad will get the result they need, and they will make it into top 8.
We are the team that took the least break from one split to another. Emotionally, we were really tired, and that build-up, it just made things way harder than it should have been. We had 2 really bad weeks.
Here is the Olaf, and there go the entirety of Mad Lions. That's 2. He's looking for more. He's looking to make it 3. He chases Chasey underneath the tower. It's 3. Can he make it 4? It's 4!
I don't feel too happy. The way we qualified and the circumstances don't allow me to be happy. I think we played pretty bad, and the fact that we're in this spot, it's pretty shaming for me. I'm relieved that we made it, but can't be too happy.
Shouldn't be the first target for Vitality. He'll fall. It's a double for Perks. Monster Feathers both hits him in the head. Vitality in the most one-sided game we have seen in a while.
We've been striving for like a long time, like even last year when we won LEC. I feel really about our place because we're like 7th place and we always want to be at the top. Like we want to be first place. That's always our goal. And then not if we play like we do right now, we get knocked out instantly.
For the first time in BDS's history, BDS win the regular season.
It's been 1.5 years that I didn't really taste LEC correctly, right? Because I was just perma-losing. Those were like a really hard year, mentally and everything, right?
Schalke are eliminated from playoffs.
BDS are out of playoffs.
Basically, this is your life, right? So if you're losing at your life, you cannot feel good. From the winter split, I just felt like it was my first split in LEC because I could feel that I'm improving and I just improved, right? So I was really happy, and this is the first step, right? The regular season. Now we have to aim for more.
For the regular season, your second seed will be Astralis.
I'm happy to be back. It's nice to play again because I've only been playing LEC for like 1.5 splits. People have been always talking about me, but I've never been here in a way.
Vitality, of course, losing out in their first best of 5.
Me and Finn are both super controversial players, so if we mess up this split and we don't do good enough, we're gonna go bankrupt in the leader and Finn stocks. Jungkook being an import, he wants to do good. 113, probably the most hated LEC player. Kobe as well, he's been around for a long time and now he's peaking. Our careers are on the line.
Leader, Solar Flame on the back line, though they're going for Mickey instead, and Mickey's already dead. Kobe doing it too. The win forfeited to Astralis.
Minimum must be to at least reach the playoffs for us.
Vitality claim 4th spot in the regular season.
I want to really work hard with my team on improving because I think we still lack a lot of team play aspects. We will definitely need to put in a lot of work.
SK trying to pray for a miracle, but in the face of heretics, your prayers mean nothing.
Our picks are probably not the best and we are not understanding how to play, and this leads to us losing confidence and then we stop playing the game like we should. When you are not as dominant in scrims, then you start doubting yourself and then it's snowballing, so we need to relax and take a step back to take like 2 steps forwards, right? And just start improving again.
He's gonna get knocked back, he's gonna get eaten alive, and the fight will keep going as Broken Blade manages to find the feast onto Irrelevant.
Oh, he's dancing! Hit him with it!
There has been some games, the split where we were a bit shaky, but it's G2, right? We will always have our shaky games.
They want to make it to groups! Empress Divine comes out, but I don't think they've done it! It does not work!
It was a pretty tough journey for all of us. We managed to turn it around between the splits, and now we finally get the wins on the board as well, so the confidence is there. It feels great to have this kind of momentum coming into the next stage now.
Fnatic did a few more autos!
It's not that yet! It's not that yet!
Just about do it at the end of the final hit! Fnatic advance to groups!
We have a lot of experienced players on the roster, a lot of players who have won a lot of titles. Now that we see BDS and Astralis being top 2, props to them, you know, they made it and they deserved it, but we will be #1 in the end.
Silence there, sidestep back, the movement's clean, but not clean enough. He dances!
I think we'll go back into the winter split SK, who is willing to try anything.
Execute cashes out!
I don't want us to have this mindset of like we're just the best, because I don't think it's true. We should just keep the mindset that we have to improve, and I'm pretty sure we can go really far.
Oh, now trying to kick it, Crown, they want to line up, group stage, they want to take out Vitality!
I hope people will start disrespecting us like they were doing in winter. We can prove them wrong.
Consistently is caught out. Hansama solo leader takes a Kobe in the end, gets the kill.
People are saying I don't belong in the LEC, but hopefully I've proven that I do belong here.
Broken Blade in the fray of Fnatic, and he's going down as well.
He does it again!
Hopefully we can go really far.
It's more on edge than before. Every week matters more than before.
They take down Perks! The rest of the team Upset move away! Upset gets over the wall! Vitality turn it around!
A lot of adaptation skills come into play, and I think we have a lot of experience in our team that it will work out good for us.
113's running for his life, but Ayoya will chase him down with the Nimbus Strike. 1, 2, 3 members of Astralis down. Mad Lions dominate Astralis.
2 more weeks of practice and that we are able to show that we are not this bad.
Whatever it takes us to MSI, that's where I want to be.
I don't see anyone else being able to compete against us.